Hi everybody, I wanted to do a quick video about why so much of the information on the internet, on the web, on YouTube, on Reddit is wrong about DayZ, or at least probably what we should say is out of date when it comes to modding servers, things you can do in the game and all that sort of stuff. And when you understand why this is the case, it makes it easier to find the proper information. And it's all to do with the development of DayZ, the rather tortured development of DayZ, and kind of what the developers were trying to do behind it, Dean Hall, and the ideas they had, and the way that the game had to change since kind of its release in 2013. So this is a classic example here. So if you do a Google search for DayZ, how to change the starting gear, which is a common thing you want to do as a say a server owner, or even as a player of the game. You know, how do I do it so that when I spawn in as a new character, you know, I have an M6, I have a M4 and 6, I have an AK rather than, you know, a plum and a rag. You know, so you go down and you'll look and you'll come across lots of information, and then you'll come across things like this from 2013, and you'll go, ooh. And you'll go in and you'll see all this stuff, and if you're kind of a little bit familiar with the way that the DayZ files are done now, you know, with init.cs and XMLs and all that sort of stuff, you'll say, well, none of this looks familiar at all, and none of it will work. So let's go back to the beginning of DayZ. So how did DayZ start? So DayZ, you know, with Dean Hall and the various people he worked with, it started as a mod for Arma 2. So Arma 2 was a military simulation game by Bohemia Interactive, and him and his mates, just a handful of them, were like, wouldn't it be cool to have a survival game, a zombie survival game, but with kind of the mechanics of Arma 2. So they created this mod, which is like it's a bit like DLC, like an add-on pack for the game. And so it, you know, it had all the core components, I think, of DayZ, you know, zombies, survival, that sort of stuff. And it was incredibly successful. And I'll put all the links to this down in the description down below. So, but as you can read on Wikipedia, you know, the mod reached 1 million players in its first 4 months on August the 6th, 2012. 1 million players were playing this mod, you know, and many people bought Arma 2 to play the DayZ mod. I don't know if it says it here, but they said something like 200 in a couple of months. They sold another 200,000 copies of Arma 2. So obviously they gave a massive input of cash into Bohemia Interactive. All of a sudden, you know, an Arma 2 at this point had been you know, I think it was about 3 years old anyway, so it was well into its life cycle as a game, and all of a sudden more people were buying it. It like went to the top of the charts on Steam. Obviously this was all based on an older engine that Bohemia Interactive were using, and that's why, you know, often when you'll look things up about DayZ, it will refer to the DayZ. And often, if it's old, if it's like pre-2014, it'll be referring to the mod. And then people refer to DayZ SA or DayZ Standalone. And that will apply to the standalone version of DayZ. Because obviously, Bohemia Interactive, you know, Dean Hall and his buddies started working for Bohemia Interactive and started working on DayZ Standalone. And DayZ Standalone, you know, we have to remember the DayZ Standalone, and this includes, you know, the version for PC, version for Xbox and PlayStation, didn't come out until 2018 and 2019. So from its initial inception back in sort of 2013 as a mod, you know, 7 years later, or 6 years later, was when the full release came out. Now, it released in alpha way back in 2014. Very janky, and lots of bugs. But what basically Dean Hall said was this. He said, who's the lead designer of DayZ, I hope I implement a lot of bad ideas so that then we know they are bad, then we can remove them and move on. If we stick to safe ideas, this isn't going to become a great game over the next few months. It will just be a cool idea, and I'll try and spend the next 10 years going around conventions talking about how cool it was. I'd rather follow all the dead ends so I know what works and what doesn't. So that kind of gives you, you know, the kind of almost gung-ho attitude of the developers. Look, let's put this stuff into the game. Let's see what works, see what doesn't, and let's take out the stuff that doesn't, and let's go on. Now, obviously, DayZ standalone sold, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of copies on PC, and there was a lot of to-ing and froing, would be a nice way of putting it, between players and the devs about the bugginess of the game, and lots of people felt that DayZ standalone wasn't as good as the mod, and there was a lot of work to do on it. And Dean and his buddies, most of them I think ended up leaving to work on other things as well. But DayZ carried on going until finally in December 2018 it came out of beta. For full release. Then on Xbox One it came out of beta in March 2019, I'm saying, and PlayStation it came out on May the 29th as version 1, and that was where we have version 1.0. And still at that point, the developers are saying that we've still got a long way to go. Many things that had originally been in the game, like things like being able to make bows, crossbows, the way that you could have bones breaking, and things like that, were not in the game. They had to bring them back in. But probably when it comes to looking for solutions on how to make things work in DayZ as a server owner and as a modder, probably the biggest change was in June 2018 when DayZ 0.63 came out. And what happened then was we then had a change of the engine that the game was running on. So previously, right up to then, DayZ standalone, and I think the mod as well, were running on a mod called the Real Virtuality platform, which was a Bohemia Interactive mod that was used on their helicopter game. So it wasn't actually the Arma 2 engine. It was a modded version of the Arma 2 engine that they used for their helicopter game, even though I don't think there was helicopters in it, but that's what it had been running on. And they wanted to get DayZ standalone onto Enfusion, their new engine, which I think was for Arma 3 as well. But this was a complete rewrite of almost everything in the game. They had to redo everything because they were coming up against these dead ends where the old engine just couldn't deliver what they wanted to do for DayZ, and maybe a big chunk of that was putting out on consoles as well. I don't know. I'm not an expert in this sort of thing, but you can imagine you're taking a game that's running on one engine and then you're running on another. Now, if you think, well, that can't be that difficult, if you just look at EA and how they cocked up many of their games when they forced all their developers to move from whichever engines they were on to having to run everything on DICE's Frostbite engine, you kind of get an idea, and you can do some research on it. Jason Schreier's done some good articles on this, where what happened was obviously EA, they bought DICE years ago, and DICE have this amazing engine for Battlefield called Frostbite, which looks so beautiful. It's really brilliant, but it's designed for shooters, and then the people behind FIFA had to make FIFA work on Frostbite, and so you had all these horrendous development problems. And this was at big AAA studios with thousands and thousands of employees and millions of dollars worth of money they could throw into it. And Bohemia Interactive and DayZ are much smaller than that. So that's why we have this problem. So again, you've got this switch between what you could do before 0.63, and then the switch over to the Enfusion engine, what we could do after that. And we're probably going to see a similar change as well if and when Bohemia Interactive switch to whatever Arma 4 is working on. Because fingers crossed, hopefully when Arma 4 comes out, which it must be in development because Arma 3 is pretty long in the tooth now, they'll look at DayZ, because DayZ, I'm pretty sure, is Bohemia Interactive's biggest cash cow in terms of the amount of people who have bought the game and have bought bought the DLC for like Livonia, and bought the add-on back in the day. Arma's made them a lot of money because lots of people have bought Arma, lots of people play Arma, and there's lots of add-ons for Arma that you can buy. But DayZ is very, very important. So so when you find articles like this, sort of pre-2018, especially ones from 2013, 2014, take them with a pinch of salt, because they won't apply to what we're doing now. There's also this other thing I have about DayZ, why it's difficult to work on. I think that Bohemia Interactive, well, there's two things. Okay, this is the controversial one. The first one is that I think Bohemia Interactive love Armour. Armour's their baby, a military simulator. And then this upstart came along, DayZ, from Dean Hole and his buddies. This amazing game that brought in millions of players, but it's fundamentally a different game. It's a zombie survival game. And I think maybe, Bohemia Interactive could have given DayZ maybe, more support, and should be giving it more support, because you've got hundreds of thousands of people playing it on console now, PlayStation and Xbox. At least as many people play it on console as they do on PC, and they deserve a game that runs well and is a AAA title, because DayZ is a fantastic concept, and it's one of the greatest games of all time. But I think there's probably a little bit of a, well, no, Armour's our thing, DayZ something else. I don't think it's treated with all the love that it could have. The second thing is that, and this is probably the cleverer one from on their part, well, you could be clever, is that I think they deliberately don't give us all the information they could do about modding DayZ, because they want people to discover things for themselves and work things out for themselves in the same way that you have to in the game. There's a reason why there's no in-game map in DayZ that you can just bring up and put markers down and figure out where to go. There's a reason why there isn't a menu that shows you all the crafting that you can do. It's because it's about discovery and learning. And I guess the other thing I'd add on the end as well is lots of the information about DayZ that is perfectly workable and perfectly correct, is pre the explosion of YouTube as well. I think that's the other thing. We're probably very used to now just going to YouTube and typing in a question and then watching a video on how to do stuff. But a lot of it is pre that, and it's hidden away in subreddits and hidden away on websites and forums, and then it gets mixed in with the older stuff as well, so you've got to be very careful. So there we go. So the next time you're being a bit frustrated about why is the stuff you're finding online wrong when you want to mod DayZ or you want to do things in DayZ, it's because it's had this amazing development cycle that's led us to where we are today with one of the most amazing games ever created. But we've had at least one change in engine and we've gone from a mod to a standalone, and so that's why you find that out. So there we go. Hopefully that's useful. Hopefully that's a little bit interesting. I'll put all the links to the articles in the description down below, so you can read about it yourself. Yeah, there we go. Thank you very much, and I'll see you again soon.